You're walking across the kitchen and suddenly your heart flutters like a bird in a cage. It stops, starts, races, slows. You brush it off. Maybe it's just a little stress. Maybe you didn't sleep well. Maybe too much coffee. But what if that strange rhythm is silently setting you up for a stroke? Hi there, I'm so glad you're here because today we're going to talk about something that affects millions of older adults, and yet far too many people have never even heard of it. It's called atrial fibrillation, or AFib for short. It may not cause pain. It may not knock you off your feet. In fact, many people don't even know they have it. But it's one of the biggest hidden causes of stroke in people over 60. And the good news, you can do something about it. In this video, we're going to walk through what AFib actually is in plain, simple language, why it matters, and how it can lead to something as serious as a stroke without you ever feeling a thing. I'll also be sharing a powerful piece of advice near the end of this series one that could literally lower your risk of stroke by up to 60% according to major studies. So please stay with me. What you learn today could protect your brain, your independence, and your future. Let's start at the very beginning. What is AFib and why does it sound so complicated? Atrial fibrillation is just a fancy term for a heartbeat that's out of rhythm. But not just any rhythm, this one is irregular and often very fast, especially in the upper parts of your heart called the atria. Picture the top chambers of your heart like two small engines that are supposed to beat in perfect harmony with the lower ones. In AFib, those engines go haywire. Instead of steady, strong beats, they start to quiver and flutter, almost like a drum line that forgot its rhythm. Now let's take a step back. Why does that matter? Imagine your heart is a strong pump like the one you'd use to water a garden. When it works well, it pushes blood forcefully through your body, feeding your muscles, your brain, and every part of you with oxygen and nutrients. But in AFib, the pump doesn't work smoothly. Instead of pushing all the blood out of those upper chambers, some of it just sits there swirling around. And that's where the real danger begins. Let me tell you about Charles. He's 74, a retired postman from Arizona. Still active, still sharp, but one day while helping his granddaughter with homework, he slurred a word. His hand trembled. Within minutes, he was in an ambulance. It was a stroke. Later, the doctors discovered the cause wasn't high cholesterol or even high blood pressure. It was a fib, undiagnosed, silent, and working in the background for who knows how long. That swirling blood we talked about earlier, it's not just sitting idle. When blood pools like that, especially in the little pocket inside the atria called the left atrial appendage, it can form clots, tiny clumps of blood that shouldn't be there. And just like a log floating in a river, those clots can get swept away. Now here's where it gets serious. If one of those clots travels from your heart up to your brain, it can block the blood flow to part of your brain. That's what a stroke is. A sudden stop of blood and therefore oxygen to a part of your brain. And the effects can be devastating: paralysis, speech problems, memory loss, or even death. According to the American Heart Association, people with AFib are about 5 times more likely to have a stroke than those without it. 5 times. And strokes related to AFib tend to be more severe. That's because the clots formed in the heart are usually larger than those from other causes. Larger clots, more damage. But here's the thing. AFib isn't always easy to spot. It doesn't always feel dramatic like you'd expect. Sometimes it's just a little flutter. Sometimes it's a feeling of being winded when climbing stairs. Sometimes it's a vague fatigue that you blame on aging or poor sleep. And sometimes there's no symptom at all. Let's talk about Margaret. She's 68, a retired teacher from Oregon. For months, she felt tired all the time. She figured it was just part of getting older. But during a routine visit, her doctor noticed an irregular heartbeat. After a simple test called an EKG, they confirmed she had AFib. She never would have known. And this is why getting checked matters. There are tools now that can detect AFib quickly. An EKG, a wearable monitor, even some smartwatches today can pick up irregular rhythms. But you have to know to look. That's the key. Now here's a question I get all the time. If I'm not feeling anything, why should I worry? Because your heart can be out of rhythm and still keep you on your feet. But those clots don't need a warning signal. They don't come with flashing lights. They just form quietly and strike suddenly. That's what makes AFib so dangerous. It's not about how you feel, it's about what's happening inside. And this leads to one of the most important things we'll talk about: treatment. Because once you know you have AFib, There are steps you can take to protect yourself. In fact, one class of medication blood thinners has been shown to reduce stroke risk in people with AFib by more than half. That's huge, but we'll get to that a bit later. For now, if you've ever felt those strange palpitations, or if you're over 60 and haven't had your heart rhythm checked in a while, consider this your gentle wake-up call. It's not about fear, it's about power. The power to take control of your heart health and stay independent, vibrant, and strong. Before we move forward, I'd love to know, have you ever felt a flutter in your chest that made you stop and wonder? If this is resonating with you, I'd be honored if you commented below with your age or where you're watching from. It's such a joy to know we're not alone in this journey. Let's keep going and take a closer look at what happens when blood clots form and where they travel next. Remember, when the upper chambers of your heart are fluttering instead of pumping steadily like in AFib, blood doesn't move the way it should. And when blood sits still, even for a short while, it becomes more likely to clot. It's like when water in a river stops flowing and turns into a puddle, that's when sediment starts to collect. Your blood works the same way. Once a clot forms in the heart, it's like a passenger getting ready to board a train. Only this passenger is going on a one-way trip to somewhere in your body. If that clot gets pushed into the bloodstream, it can travel through your arteries, and the scariest destination of all, the brain. Let's picture it. A clot leaves the heart and rides the bloodstream like a raft. As it moves through smaller and smaller blood vessels, eventually it may reach a spot too narrow to pass through. That's when it gets stuck, blocking blood from reaching a part of your brain. In medical terms, this is called an ischemic stroke, and it accounts for nearly 90% of all strokes. In the case of AFib, it's often one of these clots that's the cause. Here's where it hits home. When that blockage happens, brain cells begin to die within minutes. Without oxygen, the parts of your brain responsible for speech, memory, movement, even your personality can be damaged. And in some cases, that damage can't be undone. Let me tell you about Ruth. She was 76 and sharp as a tack. Loved crossword puzzles, volunteered at the library, and walked her dog every morning. One morning, her husband found her struggling to speak and unable to lift her right arm. It was a stroke caused by a clot that had likely formed in her heart due to undiagnosed AFib. She recovered, but it took months of therapy just to get her words back. Ruth says she never knew anything was wrong with her heart until it was almost too late. And Ruth is not alone. Studies have shown that nearly 1/3 of people with AFib don't know they have it until after they've already had a stroke. Think about that. For many, the first sign that something's wrong is a life-changing event. This is why early diagnosis matters so much. But here's the twist: AFib doesn't always show up clearly. It can come and go. This is called paroxysmal AFib, a fancy name that simply means it shows up in episodes. One day your heart is steady, the next it skips and flutters, then it's fine again. That makes it easy to miss, especially if you only feel it briefly or not at all. That's why wearable heart monitors or even a 24-hour Holter monitor are such valuable tools. They give doctors a longer window to catch AFib in action. And some smartwatches today can detect irregular rhythms and alert you to check in with your doctor. In fact, a 2020 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine found that smartwatch technology detected signs of AFib in about 0.5% of users, people who otherwise might never have known. So if you've been feeling more tired than usual or short of breath, when you climb stairs or even just off in a way that's hard to explain, those could be clues. And even if you feel totally fine, getting a heart rhythm check as part of your regular wellness visit is a smart move. Now let's talk about symptoms, or rather the lack of them. Many people assume that if something's wrong with their heart, they'd know. But AFib often doesn't follow that rule. Some feel a fluttering sensation in their chest. Others say it feels like their heart is flip-flopping or racing. But for many, it's just a creeping sense of fatigue. Not the kind where you stayed up late, more like a heaviness in your body or running out of breath too quickly. Think about Henry, 80 years old and proud of his garden. He noticed he had to sit down more often while pruning roses. At first, he blamed it on age. But his wife noticed his pulse fell off when she held his hand during TV time. He got checked, and yes, a fib. A few months later with treatment, he was back out there trimming hedges and planting zinnias without needing to catch his breath. Fatigue, mild breathlessness, a racing heart that comes and goes, or sometimes nothing at all. These are the fingerprints of AFib. Quiet, inconsistent, easy to dismiss. That's what makes it so tricky. But here's the empowering part. AFib doesn't have to be a life sentence. Once it's diagnosed, doctors have an entire toolkit to help you stay safe. One of the most important tools, blood thinners. These medications don't fix the rhythm itself, but they reduce the risk that a clot will form in the first place. Studies show that blood thinners can reduce the risk of AFib-related stroke by 60% or more. 60%. That's a number worth paying attention to. You've probably heard of some of these medications, warfarin, apixaban, rivaroxaban. They work in different ways, but they all do one thing: make it harder for clots to form. Of course, they come with some risks, like increased bleeding, so it's important to find the right fit with your doctor. But for many, they're life-changing and life-saving. Imagine how different Ruth's story might have been if she had started a blood thinner just a few months earlier. That's why education is power. That's why conversations like this matter. If you're still watching and finding these lessons valuable, please comment the number 1 below, just so I know you're still with me. It means so much to know you're taking your health seriously, and I appreciate you sharing this time with me. Let's keep going, because there's one more thing we need to talk about, something that could make all the difference when it comes to protecting yourself or a loved one from the unexpected. When we think about heart problems, we often focus on how the heart beats. But in AFib, it's not just about the beat, it's about what that beat can cause. And what makes AFib so unique and frankly so dangerous is how quietly it can lead to a life-altering stroke. You've already heard how clots form, how they travel, and how they block the brain. Now let's talk about the other part of the equation, what to do once you know you have AFib. One of the most important steps is building the right treatment plan with your doctor. We talked earlier about blood thinners, how they help prevent clots from forming. But managing AFib goes beyond just one prescription. It often involves a full picture of your heart health, your lifestyle, and your risk factors. For example, did you know that high blood pressure is one of the biggest contributors to both AFib and stroke? It stiffens the heart muscle over time and can make those upper chambers more likely to misfire. In fact, according to the CDC, 3 out of 4 people with AFib also have high blood pressure. That means managing your numbers, keeping your blood pressure in a safe range, is not just good for your heart. It's also key to preventing AFib from getting worse. And let's not forget about sleep apnea, which affects a surprising number of older adults. Interrupted breathing at night puts strain on your heart and has been strongly linked to AFib. In one major study, people with untreated sleep apnea were more than twice as likely to develop AFib compared to those without it. So if you snore loudly, wake up gasping, or feel unusually tired during the day, that might be something to look into. Treating sleep apnea doesn't just help you sleep better, it can literally take pressure off your heart. Now I want to introduce you to Gloria. She's 70, lives in Chicago, and was diagnosed with AFib after fainting at the grocery store. She'd been on blood thinners ever since, but it wasn't until her cardiologist brought up her sleep habits that they uncovered her undiagnosed sleep apnea. Once she started using a CPAP machine at night, her fatigue improved, her AFib episodes decreased, and she hasn't had another scary incident since. It wasn't just the medicine, it was the full picture that made the difference. So what does that full picture look like? It means keeping your blood pressure under control, staying physically active even with light walking, cutting back on alcohol, which can trigger AFib episodes, managing your weight, especially if you carry extra pounds around your midsection, checking for sleep apnea or getting screened if you have signs, staying on top of other conditions like diabetes or thyroid issues. None of these are extreme changes. In fact, they're all about making your heart feel more at ease, giving it the rhythm and rest it needs to function at its best. But let's not forget one more critical piece: staying connected with your care team. AFib isn't something you manage once and forget. It's something that requires check-ins, monitoring, and sometimes adjustments in your treatment plan over time. And this is where you come in. You are your own best advocate. You are the one who can notice those small changes a bit more: fatigue, a slightly faster heartbeat, a missed pill. Don't ever think it's silly to speak up. That voice inside you is important, and your story might just help your doctor see something they otherwise wouldn't. Take Ben, for example. He's 81 and lives alone in a small town in Montana. After being diagnosed with AFib, he started tracking his pulse each morning and evening using a home blood pressure cuff with a heart rate monitor. Over time, he noticed some irregularities episodes where his pulse spiked without warning. He wrote it down, brought it to his doctor, and sure enough, they made an adjustment to his medication. That simple habit, just checking his pulse, may have helped him avoid a major episode. You don't need to be a tech expert. You don't need to own a fancy watch. Even the old-fashioned way, feeling your pulse on your wrist or neck and noticing if it's skipping around can tell you a lot. And if you're supporting a loved one with AFib, your role matters too. Sometimes it's the spouse, the daughter, the friend who sees the symptoms more clearly. Don't be afraid to speak up for them. Encourage them to get checked. Stay curious, stay kind, stay connected. Now I know we've covered a lot today, how AFib starts, how it causes clots, how those clots lead to stroke, and what you can do about it. But here's the bottom line. AFib is not a death sentence. It is not something to fear. It is something to understand. And once you do, you can take steps, small, steady, smart steps that give you back your power. Here's a comforting fact. When AFib is managed properly, most people live full, active, joyful lives. They travel, they dance, they garden, they babysit grandkids. They keep doing what they love because they caught the rhythm in time. So let me ask you something. What's the one thing that really hit home for you today? Was it a story, a number, a symptom you felt before? I'd love for you to share it in the comments. What's one habit you plan to start or continue to take care of your heart? Your wisdom could inspire someone else reading along. And if you found this helpful, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more clear, compassionate health advice made just for you. Because this is your time, your season, and your health deserves to be treated with care, knowledge, and hope. Here's to living your best life at any age.